Life can change in an instant. For many wheelchair users, the struggle to push forward is a daily challenge. After years of development and countless prototypes, we created Rib Grips, the revolutionary wheelchair hand rim covers with built-in ribs for ultimate grip and comfort. No more slick surfaces, no more heat burns, just pure, reliable grip. Rib Grips, empowering you to push forward with ease. Rib Grips. Get a grip on your freedom. Discover the difference. Visit ribgrips.com and use promo code GRIP today. You just found the perfect product that helps with staying cool during hot summer runs. No more gross warm water. Stay cool with this product from Gear Handle. This hydration tube cover helps keep your water cool and easily accessible. Stay hydrated during those long summer runs or even delay from freezing in the winter. Plus, they're compatible with various brands of water bladders and come in various colors. Visit GearHandle.com and use promo code H2O today. This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Claire Sanema is a decorated investigative journalist. Over 20 episodes of 48 Hours she has produced. She's got a true crime pod now. She has a book that is coming out called Killer Story. That's coming out in February. True crime will be in the show notes, called Final Days on Earth. She is also sober, and that's what we do around here, right? We share stories of recovery. We share stories of hope. This is a great example of what can happen to your life when alcohol leaves the equation. And it's also like a really smart conversation, like above my pay grade, but she breaks down some of the science and some of the data that as a society we like to ignore around alcohol and alcohol consumption. Like, why are we all running around sucking back this neurotoxin, or at least why was I? We, hopefully, right, are not anymore. But if you're thinking about stopping, this is a great one to listen to. And also, if you have a family member that's trying to stop but can't, this is another, that's another great aspect of this. She has some loved ones or someone closer in her life that has struggled to find sobriety, and that's how she found sobriety herself. All right, enough of me. Claire Sanema. But first, Kevin Souza. You're an investigative journalist, somebody who clearly, and just talking to you about some of the people you came up, shouldn't say came up, but your higher education, you went to Baylor. Journalism major, I'm assuming?
Yeah, English major, journalism minor.
Okay. What turned you on about journalism early on?
So I was one of those people that always wanted to work in media. I had a newspaper called Kids News in elementary school that I wrote with a friend who lived in the neighborhood, and we would ride our bikes around. We would take notes. We would report on things, and then we would go to Kinko's and make copies of our paper. We did illustrations. We had an advice column. It was lots of fun, and we did this for years. And we sold it. We would go to doctors' offices and ask if we could, sell them a copy for their waiting room. And we were very entrepreneurial. So it was an early love for me with journalism.
Right away, you sort of stand out in the sense that consistency at an early age. I had like a sports newspaper too, but I got out one I got one published. That was it. I mean, it was a lot of work. It was, the Xerox copies, my mom, I dictated to her, she typed it. Maybe that was part of the problem. We had trouble with the help.
There you go.
But yeah, I share that with you a little bit. Like early on, I grew up, I know your experience working with news magazines and 60 Minutes and 48 Hours. I grew up, I remember 2020 was a big thing for me. It was Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters and my dad. It was Friday night, and that was like, he was always watching that. And it really did sort of blow my mind, because that was one of those things where, okay, I don't want to watch. I do want to watch. Like, this is super interesting. Did you have a moment like that? That's sort of where you turn the corner?
Yeah, like you, I remember watching 2020 as a kid, and one of my friends used to do a great Barbara Walters impression. So that was always fun. But yeah, shows like that were like appointment viewing. You couldn't take, you could tape it if you had the VCR and you were planning ahead, but for the most part, you had to be right there watching. So, I mean, I loved watching television. I actually watched a ton of sports growing up. And even today, when I was a kid, one of the things I used to do is I would watch the Houston Rockets and I'd put it on mute and I would call the game.
Oh, wow. There we go. Yeah.
My parents would humor me and let me do the play-by-play.
You're right in my wheelhouse. I would do the exact same thing.
It's so fun, and I think there's just magic to television, and especially as a kid, you just kind of can't believe that it's right in this, right in this box. You can watch all these different things. I know, like my son today, I mean, it's just so different with all the different options, but just being able to click through the channels was pretty exciting that all this content was waiting for you to find it.
It's weird. I don't mean to go to get off my lawn mode, but I really do think it was, I don't know. I romanticize about it, I guess. But like you had like for us, I grew up in Philadelphia. It was like NBC, ABC, CBS affiliates. Then you had Fox, and then that was it. And then cable. But like there were only so many options, and there was communal viewing. I mean, even this is before you and I, but like Walter Cronkite, right? Like he was America's news anchor, and it's much different now. Pros, cons. Your calling card right now is true crime. When was there a certain thing when you were younger that made you think, "Oh wow, I'm very interested in this"?
So the first thing is on a family vacation to San Francisco. We all got to pick something that we wanted to do. I'm the youngest of 3 kids, and so we all got to choose an activity in San Francisco. And so we were researching it, figuring out what we wanted to do. And I picked Alcatraz, that I wanted to go tour Alcatraz. And, it was fascinating to me, the history there, all the stories, all the lives, all the wrong turns, the what might have been. And I remember in the gift shop, there was a book and it was the stories of Alcatraz, and it was different inmates who had been there and why they were there and how long they were there. And I found it just completely captivating. And the idea that, we don't always know, we might see the headline, we might have heard of the crime, but we don't know the story behind it. We don't know all the people affected. That really stuck with me early on. And then I went into journalism, and I wasn't a true crime journalist to start. But, I was a general assignment reporter in a local newspaper called People Newspapers, a chain in Dallas. And one of the many things that I did was the police blotter. And so for me, that was really my entry into true crime. As I was looking at the police blotter, I was seeing all these different crimes that were happening every day. And I started to find stories within that. I found, the most robbed subway in Dallas. To me, that was interesting. Why is this subway getting robbed way more, than others? And so then I talked to investigators and police officers and people at the subway. And, we kind of figured out why we thought this one was getting robbed. Spoiler alert, it's always an inside job, right? So, that's kind of ended up being true in so many of, my true crime cases that seem baffling, seem unsolvable. And there's usually, a personal connection. There's always somebody, it seems random. It seems like, how could this happen here? And once you put all the pieces of the puzzle together, it's usually, a personal connection, some type of secret relationship, that makes it all make sense.
Yeah. This is great. All right. So I'm so interested in your career, but I want to hear about your life too. Early on as a kid, was there any alcohol or alcoholic influences in the household, in the family? What was your exposure like for that? Like I would say, I grew up with a dad who was a functional alcoholic, great dad, loved us to death, but he was an alcoholic. It was in his family. That's who he was.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, my family's like South Louisiana by, I was born in Dallas and I've lived in Texas most of my life. There was a little bit of Louisiana in there, but the heritage is South Louisiana. It's just a big drinking culture. Yes. I mean, the priests drink, the Catholic priests drink. It was never really presented to me as bad or dangerous. It was part of life. It was part of daily life and a lot of my experience. It wasn't unusual to see it at any time of the day for any occasion. It was part of celebrating a lot. That was chiefly how things were celebrated. We knew that, something was being celebrated if alcohol was out. Yeah. And, I really didn't question it for a very long time. And, going to Baylor was interesting because I met people for the first time who didn't drink. And I remember just being completely confused by these people, not understanding like, how is this possible? And do you know that this exists? Why would you choose not to do this? Like it was so baffling to me. And, just a full circle moment, now those friends, are surprised as anyone that I'm like, oh, I don't drink alcohol anymore. I don't have any interest in it. I don't want it. I don't keep it in my house. And that was just the furthest thing from my mind for a very long time.
What drew you to Baylor? As far as you're a kid in Dallas, you love, obviously you got your own newspaper. So you're on a roll. In high school, what piqued your interest about going to Baylor?
Yeah, so I actually did grow up in Katy, outside Houston. Okay. Go Tigers, home of the Tigers. But yes, my older sister went to Baylor, and so that became the big influence for me. That she was there, and they had a great journalism school. My older brother went to A&M, but they didn't have a journalism school. And, Baylor was a lot more appealing. So that was the big draw for me.
So you're youngest of three. I can connect with you there. I'm the youngest of three. My brother sort of paved the way for me socially. And part of that social interaction was alcohol. They would have parties and their friends would be over and they were like, all right, like you can drink, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. When was the first time that you can remember, drinking an alcoholic beverage?
Oh yeah. Very young. I was middle school, probably 12 years old. Yeah. And just presented as though, I was now part of the secret cool club, it was this great thing. And it was this adult thing that I could do, as a kid. And, I think all of that, to me, that's one of the most fascinating parts of, the way alcohol's discussed in our culture. It is really elevated to this sophisticated adult thing that, you have to be mature to be able to drink. And the idea that, anything that's non-alcoholic, we're going to call that a virgin, right? What could be less appealing, right? We don't want that. I've even been places where they call it kiddie cocktails. Yeah. And I'm like, I want to rebrand this. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'm like, can we just call it pure? Can we say I want a pure drink? Because I don't want my drink spiked with poison. Like I would actually just like to taste the flavors and not, have that hiding in there. So yeah, I think it's really, I feel like my eyes have been opened, to so much about just the way alcohol is presented in our culture and packaged. It's really, to me, I feel like it's like a daily thing where I'm like, oh, that's weird.
So you're by the way, you're a thinker. You've got a sense of history. You have investigating in your bones. Well, have you ever looked into this or thought about this or taken some time to be like, why is alcohol so predominant in our culture?
Yeah, I haven't any more than sort of these in the moment conversations and some of the reading that I've done. A big influence book for me is that Quit Like a Woman Holly Whitaker. And, she talks about how our culture is obsessed with alcohol, how we can't have a baby shower without booze, and it's strange whenever you start to really think about it. I think so much of it is the fact that it is an addictive substance. So as soon as you start drinking it, you want more of it. You want to have it more often. You want to, so you bring it into all your events. You somehow make it normal to, have this neurotoxin present in your family events, in your child's events, just so that, I guess the idea is that you would have more fun or, but it's, as you and I both know, that's the great lie.
Yes.
I one of the things in that book, Quit Like a Woman, it talks about the phrase drink responsibly and how that was invented, by Anheuser-Busch. And I'm just like, how perfect is that they're going to say, drink responsibly, drink this poison responsibly, right? That's the subtext. It's on you. It's not on us giving you this. So those types of things have really just reframed, my understanding of alcohol and, really see it as something akin to, cigarettes, where everyone universally agrees cigarettes are bad for you, right? They're not good for you. Some people still choose to smoke, but everyone knows that when they do that they're taking a health risk, right? And that's really like where, I see the alcohol conversation going. And I hope that, I can be part of that to say that, this is actually a bad choice every time for everyone. You can still choose to make that because we make bad choices all the time. But, this is one with special risks and special concerns. And you should just know going in, that there's this whole industry trying to get you to drink more and to think that this is what being an adult means. And this is what having fun means. And they actually have, a calculated monetary interest in getting you to believe that.
And if you think about it, when you and I, roughly, around the same age, I'm older than you, but like, even as people who love magazines and periodicals as kids, like, I mean, every other page was this sexy cigarette ad or it was appeal. I used to have Joe Camel stuff all over my room. I didn't smoke. I was like in 5th grade, but it was so cool and so appealing. And I think that the science, right, and what we've learned has totally put that out to pasture. Like you don't see those ads anymore. And you're telling me, and that's a really good point. And I really haven't thought about this, at least not in a while, that could be the future. Like that could be where we're headed as this looking at this toxin, right, with its risks rather than with its romantic rewards, right? And how sexy it is.
Totally. Yes. I think just a clear-headed, dare I say sober, assessment of what alcohol is. I think it, definitely merits that treatment that cigarettes have gotten and that tobacco companies have to abide by. People should really know going in, not romanticize it and know really what it is. I think I'm encouraged by a lot of more common conversations about sobriety, about the benefits of not drinking. I think 2020 brought to light so much in the world. And I think one of the things, as we know now, is a huge uptick in alcohol consumption, drugs and alcohol. But there's always a kickback for that, and so as the drinking went up, so did all these health problems. So did, other complicating factors and
mental health problems.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the anxiety, all of that. You're at Baylor, and you mentioned like the environment isn't such, like it's not like you went to Arizona State, although great journalism there too. But what was your experience like, I guess, like socially and drinking at a school like Baylor, which somebody from, 30,000 feet might say is refined?
Yeah, it was pretty moderate. I mean, there were root beer kegs at a lot of the parties, it was not, it was nothing too crazy. To me, it was a lot. After college, I went to the Peace Corps
I
in
saw
Ukraine.
that. Yeah.
So that was a much heavier drinking scene than Baylor by far.
Really?
So yeah. I mean, they drink straight vodka there.
In Ukraine.
Yes, in Ukraine. And so that was like the drink of choice. And I mean, we would say, we were, I guess, surprised to find out that beer and vodka was cheaper than water in Ukraine. So bottled water was far more expensive. So that was surprising for sure. But yeah, that was more of a party atmosphere, than Baylor was for me in terms of drinking. And culturally, the way they drink in Ukraine is, shots, and everyone sits around the table and takes a shot together, like for hours,
How
and
long?
so
This is a silly question. How long in between the shots?
Hard to say.
Yeah, okay.
Not long, not very long, but these meals would go on 2, 3, 4 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there were these traditions, the first shot was always, to the meeting, and then it was like to us, and then it was to women, then it was to men. And then, I might be messing up the order, but there were all these rituals, around it. And I mean, I remember even there, I was just like, I can't do this. And so I would start, once people were gone, I would take the shot and I would just throw it over my shoulder, and realize no one's looking at me. No one notices if this is hitting the floor. Nobody knows, or I had a coffee cup because we would have coffee and I'd just be dumping it in the coffee cup and then, have to make sure I don't forget and sip the coffee. Right. But yeah, it was really part of like belonging. And, it was, it was hugely emphasized that this is what we're doing.
How about the Peace Corps? Like what's that? What's almost as an aside, but also with the, you mentioned just the environment that it was like. I mean, obviously you guys are doing amazing work, but also there's blowing off steam, right? Like to the nth degree. Because I can't imagine what you're doing or seeing over there. What is that like though? How many people are you with? Walk me through like a day. Give me a Cliff's Notes version.
Sure. So in the beginning, we're like in training groups. And so it was me and 3 other, so there were 4 of us that were living in this one village, and we each had our own host family. And we were, it was like 3 months, and we had like language training, intensive language training, like 6 days a week. And so we were around, each other every day, other Americans. And then, like our language teacher was native Ukrainian, as well. And all the people who worked for Peace Corps Ukraine were Ukrainians. And so, we worked in schools. That's what I did. I was in English as a foreign language teacher. There are other programs where people work with businesses or, youth, organizations, but that was the first 3 months. And then after that, if you can pass a State Department fluency exam in Ukrainian, then you can go live by yourself.
Did you pass? Did you do that?
I did. I really badly,
wow, that's impressive.
Really badly did not want to live with the host family. So
really?
yeah.
So when you spread your wings a little bit, does it ramp up the drinking and the social stuff?
Yeah, I remember we would always try to look out for each other, like as volunteers. And, I was the only one in my town, and that's usually how it is, unless you live in a really big city. There was like a university in Ivano-Frankivsk. And so there were several volunteers that lived there. Okay. But other than that, I was just living by myself in this town. I look back at so many experiences and I'm just like, the grace of God.
So to walk me through some of those, like when do you realize that this is, because I looked at it as, wow, this is this conduit to all these things I want to do in my life, whether it's talking to members of the opposite sex or having courage or whatever, alcohol was a gift. But then it kind of turned on me. Did it start to scare you a little bit when you were, overseas? So,
I definitely saw, I had never really had just straight alcohol before. It was always the girly drinks or, 1 or 2 beers. And so just having that volume of straight alcohol. Sorry, I have a sleeping dog behind me.
You're
that
good. I got a
sometimes
little
is
cough,
yawning.
so we're good.
Okay. Yeah. So,
As long as you're not yawning consistently, I'm good.
We'll be all right. Yeah. So, I think I definitely started to recognize that this is a different level of drinking, and this is not, this isn't social. This is like these people that I'm around, like they're like drinking to forget, they're drinking to go like somewhere else. And so for me, starting to do those things, like I said, like toss it over my shoulder, stick it in the coffee cup, because I realized at that time, I didn't feel like I could have the conversation where I said, like, I'm not comfortable drinking this much alcohol. I'm not comfortable being around this much drinking, so I was just trying to fit in, hide the fact that
like
this
most
was
of us are
for me.
And that's how you get yourself, especially as a female, into some really weird, dangerous situations.
Yeah. And so, we had like a system, like we would text each other when we were leaving places, when we were getting home, and, making sure that that we knew, that someone else knew if we were, not home, not where we were supposed to be. So that, that was definitely really important to me, to have those connections. And I'm still friends, with those women today. We now have like a Peace Corps book club that we started. And, it's just so fun. Just having that, that connection. But, I looked at the Peace Corps whenever I saw, like in Ukraine, like alcoholism is rampant. And the life expectancy is so low for lots of different reasons. But, I would see people regularly passed out, like in the street, on stoops.
Almost like the heroin epidemic we have in parts of America now.
Yeah. And there's the thing about Ukrainian culture is there were not homeless people, because somebody would always take these people in. And if you stayed out on the street all night in Ukraine, you would die of, you would freeze to death. Yeah. And I'm sure that did happen somewhere in some big cities, but I would always see at the end of the night, someone's going through and making sure everyone's sleeping under a roof somewhere. So it really is like a community culture. Despite, many faults with that story there, at least there's that. Like, cause I remember one of the things talking to Ukrainians about what life was like in America and problems we had in America and, things that worked well. And one of the problems I talked about was homelessness. And they could not understand how that was a problem. They couldn't understand how someone couldn't have a home. They'd be like, but they have families. So couldn't they always go back and live with their families? And it was like, no, there's this huge breakdown, and many people lose these family bonds, and they don't have, they don't have a place to go. And that was, really shocking to these people in these small Ukrainian communities where family is so important, and generations after generations, the idea that there could be a huge homeless problem, that was just baffling to them.
Well, when you're over there, again, you're seeing so much, you're learning so much. Clearly, you're a driven person. Or when you come back to the States, or in the latter stages of being over there, is there a point, Claire, when you're like, maybe I got an issue with this, or maybe I need to stop this, or maybe I'm because most people, right, like people I know that aren't like you and I, they don't necessarily. Now, there's certain pressure situations that I can't even understand, like being a female, but even like guys I can speak for, like, we don't necessarily go along for the ride for too long unless we really enjoy getting drunk, like, picking up the next day and doing the same thing. Was there a point where you were like, wait a minute, like I like this too much, I'm into this too much, and it's starting to compete with, my drive and my moral compass?
So I had started to notice, as I was like getting more into like running and doing fitness things, I was like, man, it's really slowing me down. Like I'm going to have to, if I don't drink the night before a run, like it just goes so much better. And it was sort of like the beginning of, well, what if I didn't drink for 2 nights before a run? What if, how much better would my body be able to perform? And so I started to see just the real physical effects of it and the benefits of not doing it, and what, the freedom that gave me to pursue other activities when I wasn't feeling groggy, run down, that sort of thing. My story in no longer drinking and getting sober and all that is probably a little bit different than a lot of people that you've had on the show. But for me, it was after having an intervention for someone.
You were part of the intervention.
I was part of the intervention. I was a big part of the intervention.
Okay.
And so for me, and I'm trying to, respect privacy.
Of course,
because
of course.
Is,
yeah.
But yeah, so I had, gotten to a point where I was really fearing for this person's very life, that they would not live to see, many more days. And so I ended up, going with a full-on intervention company, getting a group of people on board. We go do this intervention and, it's a disaster. Like the person flees the intervention off roads in their vehicle to get away from this conversation. And it was really at that moment that I was like, this is a way bigger problem than I ever could have imagined. This isn't like choosing not to drink orange juice. Like the pull to do this, that they would like run away from everyone who loved them.
It's crazy.
And
right.
And I mean, I just remember hitting the floor, just my knees just hit the floor. I was crushed.
Somebody said yesterday, Claire, I was talking to, addiction is stronger than love. And what you're talking about right there is that's a total reflection of that statement.
Yeah. And it's so hard. It was so hard then. It's still hard now. But, our interventionist told us this happens in about 25% of interventions. Everyone wants to talk about the times when they say yes and it works and they, but this happens. Like people will not be able to accept the help and they will run. And that shows you like how big of a problem it is and how scary it is, the idea of facing it, that they would rather flee by any means necessary to get away from this conversation.
Did this person ever end up stopping or even trying to? No. Yeah.
No. So this is 3 years in from that. So for me, my decision not to drink sprang from that because I said, if I'm going to ask them to do that, I have to be able to do that. Like, how could I continue to do this and tell someone else this is going to kill you? Well, it might kill me, And so that, and I had, some things that were leading up to that event with this person that were really troubling and traumatic for me to witness and had kind of led to a point where whenever I saw alcohol, I was having like a anxiety reaction to it.
Yeah. And you witnessed people that have a front row seat to addiction or flirt with it. Like it sounds like, you did. It's a monster. And it's just, it's so scary. I mean, for me looking back, and that's why for me, like I stay close to like meetings and 12-step stuff because it keeps it very fresh for me. Like the darkness that I was willing to put myself in for this liquid. This liquid I was putting in front of everything else in my life. And you talk about the core values, right? Like your family, which includes loved ones, extended and immediate. And it's really, really, it's a total bummer. But at the same, I can say in the same respect for me, it's like the best thing that bummer is the best thing that ever happened to me because I really needed to reach that extreme bottom. I was talking to another alcoholic a couple weeks ago. Your bottom is when you stop digging, right? So you see this, you're freaked out, you stop digging. What do? Do you pick up this book, Quit Like a Girl? Are you like, what can I do to like kind of move the needle here?
Yeah. So I was shook, and I was devastated for this person that I really wanted to help. And so I was noticing, one of the first things I did is I just went to my husband. I said, I don't want to keep alcohol in the house. I don't want to drink anymore. Like, I think the exact phrase I used was, I don't want to do this for a while. I think that's what I said. I don't want to drink for a while, and that was those are all the words I had. That was all I could say. That was all I could commit to at that moment. And, whenever I would see alcohol, I would just have this really strong panic reaction of like almost like seeing like a loaded gun or a ticking time bomb or a house on fire, just kind of like, does everyone know that this is here? Like someone should be doing something about this, And I remember going to restaurants and I would see people drinking alcohol and I would be like, I better watch them, like,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're okay, and I started going to therapy, and really my goal with therapy, I was like, I just need to get this under control so that I can be normal and drink again. That's what I thought, because I was like, this is weird. I can't be the girl that doesn't drink. Like, that's, I don't want to be the buzzkill at the party,
Yeah.
And so it really was this journey of self-discovery and of education. And, the book, Quit Like a Woman, really helped me see the role that just American culture plays in perpetuating drinking culture. And I started to see, so many references like in television shows and movies. And, I was just stunned how often we prop up alcohol as the answer to all of our problems when it is,
it's the exact opposite of a solution.
Yes. And it's like everything that it says it's going to give you, it takes away from you, and it's like, how did things get so backwards and so twisted? And I just really wanted to be part of the, revolution, part of the counterculture. And that, I have just a rebel spirit. And so that really played into me being like, I'm not going to be like everybody else and go along and drink this poison and become addicted to this and have to spend my money on this and deplete my health, all these things. It was like, no, you can choose a different way. And to me, the book, Quit Like a Woman, there's also, We Are the Luckiest, and it's the subtitle is like the magic, the surprising magic of a sober life. And I love that.
What was a key component to that book that you were able to put into practice in your own life today that you saw change?
So probably the biggest one was build a life that you don't need to escape from. And I have thought of that so much and so often, because what is alcohol but trying to make like the moment better, trying to forget something that is bothering you, right? And it's like we have choices in our life, and we don't have to live a life that we're always trying to escape from or avoid or put a Band-Aid on. And it's like, don't go to the event if you need alcohol to enjoy it. Light bulb. Like, I can choose not to go to these events that I don't find fun unless I'm drinking. Well, guess what? I don't need to go to those places. I don't need to be around, those people in those situations. If I need alcohol to enjoy it, I don't actually enjoy it. So why am I going? And that was freeing to me. And, one of the main things I feel like I've gotten back, from my life by not drinking is the gift of time. I mean, you go to brunch and you're drinking, that's like 3-4 hours of your day.
Yeah. And, like, and a lot of times the rest of your day is shot in the ass too, because.
Yes.
Yeah.
You get home, you take a nap, whatever. And it's like, this is not the life I want to live. Like, I want to be present for my life. I want to be experiencing all of it. I want to be engaged with it. And, I've found, like, the subtitle, The Surprising Magic. I mean, there's just so much magic in being actually on a beach with the waves and the sand, and there's no filter for it, right? Like, you're really there and you can enjoy it more fully because there's nothing clouding it. There's nothing clouding your perception of it. There's nothing clouding your memory of it. There's nothing clouding your mind, and I think that, I go back to that word, the purity of it is just so beautiful. And there's actually not, like, you can't really improve upon the beach. Like, if you think,
yeah, I was about to say, like, that doesn't need any help.
It really doesn't,
yeah.
So it's about recognizing the beauty of what already exists and getting to experience that without having to be your mind altered.
How have people in your life responded to this approach?
So, yeah, it's definitely been a surprise to a lot of people, especially the ones that I was like goading to drink in college, they're like, you of all people. And it's very funny, right? I mean, I think that I love, surprising people. So I enjoy that aspect of it. It's always interesting to me, the different responses. And like, whenever I tell people like, oh, like I don't drink anymore, a lot of times the response will be not even a little bit, not even on the weekends, and in my mind, I'm like, like that,
that tells you something there. Yeah. I don't like to take people's inventory, but like, when somebody is like asking you a lot of questions as to why don't you drink, because there's so many, when you start to build a sober life, you realize there's so many people out there who like aren't like you and I in a sense of how we were raised. I was raised Catholic. Not that that's like, but whatever. I was raised Catholic and there was a lot of drinking in that culture. And I didn't know anything else. Like alcohol was my dad's family. Alcohol, like you said, it was time to celebrate. It was time to cut loose.
Yep.
I didn't know people who didn't drink as a kid.
Yeah.
Adults, and if I did, they were certainly outliers. But there's so many of them out there. When you actually start to live, there's so many people who alcohol is not even on the table, like literally and figuratively, ever.
Yeah.
They just don't think about it. And it's so interesting about how when you tell someone that likes to drink that you don't drink, that can trigger a little bit of a reaction.
It does. Yeah, it definitely does. And in a lot of people. And, it's been interesting just to see that spectrum of responses. And, I found a group of people, now just people that in my life that don't drink, some who never drank and some who, stopped drinking. And those have become much closer friends than I ever would have imagined, simply because we have this incredibly common ground,
Do you connect with them over that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's been, it's kind of been one of the enriching qualities of my friendships now, is thinking that, these people want to hang out with me without alcohol. Like they actually like me, they're not there for the neurotoxin, this is real. They want to have a conversation with sober Claire.
Well, and their motives are pure. So, I mean, we all have like stuff we battle with is whatever, but like when you're with somebody who's like-minded as far as sobriety is concerned, for me, alcohol or drugs, right, always kind of got in the way of what it was always my motive. Like the moment I drank, and it really worked for me when I was like a teenager in high school. Like looking back now, I was moved towards that next drink without even knowing it. Whatever successes I had and stuff, I was constantly banging into alcohol because I was always moving towards it. And that rocked me. And ultimately, like we talked about it, just like you, it made me stop. I was a little bit more a grand fashion, but that's a beautiful thing too, is like, first of all, your story is blowing my mind because like I said, your bottom is when you stop digging, but there's also a couple of things here. Like there are people who deal with alcoholism and addiction in their families, among their friends, all the time, and people don't know how to handle it. And like that intervention story is like, that is like one of a kind. I mean, maybe it's not right 25% of the time, but it still is like, how do you respond to that? Well, you respond in the way that you did, which is pretty healthy. And it's really cool to see that rebel spirit you have now sort of, hey, I don't drink. Like, so what? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the beauty of like, I never have to worry about like having another hangover. Like I will never have another hangover. Like that, what a gift to give myself, to never have that. I just think that if people, are wondering if not drinking is for them, like try it out and see how much your life improves. Like, see how, people always talk about this, but your sleep improves, your skin improves, your hair improves, like, your weight improves. Like, it's sort of, not realizing that you've been slowly conditioning your body to take in more and more poison. And then suddenly you take that poison away and you're like, I feel better, not worse, and it's kind of simple, really, if you look at it, but it's by all these different, complicating cultural factors, it seems, it's surprising to people. And I've had, a lot of conversations with people where, people will make comments about like, oh, you're, something about my appearance, just like just a nice,
you look great.
Sweet thing. Or, yeah. What's your secret?
Yeah.
And I say, I don't drink. I mean, that's my secret. And it's funny because the responses, but I really think that's the secret sauce to it, So
I got a couple more things. One more thing on sobriety, and then I want to ask you about your career because I'm super interested. Is there anything you do every day or daily or weekly that keeps you, free of the alcohol temptation, or, is there any daily practice you do to keep yourself the way that you are right now, right? Clearly moved by something, clearly, like, I call it the sunlight of the spirit, but it's coming through you. Like, how do you keep that going?
Yeah, I mean, I have like, my faith is a big part of what keeps me centered and what reminds me of what's important, what this life's all about, And I have that morning time, with God, where I have a group of people that I'm like on a Tuesday night Bible study with, and we use the Bible app to actually do studies virtually, all week, and then we discuss them on Tuesdays. And so that time is sacred to me, and that really helps you just center me and remind me of what really matters, and what the timeless wisdom to me. Like, I'm always amazed the things you can pull out of Proverbs and Psalms, and really find that that word from God that shows you the wisdom for your moment that you're in right now. So that's huge for me. And then I'm an exercise person.
Okay.
I think, working up a good sweat and getting, your body moving every day. I try to do that every day. So those two things,
faith and fitness don't hurt. They never hurt. Right.
Yeah. Right.
They don't get in the way of good living, in my experience.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So your career, how did you get into working for CBS News? And well, let me ask, you're a journalist. I don't want to ask two questions at once. So how did you get into working for CBS News?
So I was working at a digital news site, a daily news website called Culture Map Dallas. And I had taken a job as this would have been I guess it was 2013.
Okay.
Yeah, 2013. So I had been there for about a year, and I was the managing editor, and I had taken that job from local media with the promise that I could do investigative journalism.
Yeah.
Because it was, really important to me, and I wanted to be able to do my own stories and my own projects. And so I did the job as a managing editor, doing everything, managing staff writers and freelancers, but I also had carved out space to do this investigative reporting. And so one of those stories ended up being about a home invasion in Keller, Texas, where a woman had called 911 breathlessly. My husband's been shot. There was an intruder in the house, come, send in the ambulance, come quickly. And, it turned out that almost nothing the woman had said was true. And that this was an entirely different crime scene and scenario than she was presenting. And so it went down this wild rabbit hole. And it's my true crime origin story, because I wrote this investigative piece about her while she was out on bond, while the case was still very much up in the air, and ended up, affecting getting into the case, into the trial, like affecting the whole, legal system with my reporting.
Yeah.
And that is got the attention of the major true crime network shows.
Yeah, this is great. So did you ever have any interaction with this woman?
So I haven't yet. Now, this is so fascinating because I have decided to make this the third season of Final Days on Earth.
Okay.
So this is the current case.
So was this on 2011?
Re-examining.
This was in 2011.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the guy, Greg.
Yes.
Okay.
Greg Williams.
Okay. Now was this? Did you make this? And forgive my ignorance. Did you make this? Like, was this a 48 hours or was this? It was. Okay.
So it became 2 different episodes of 48 hours because the first one was about my initial reporting and, the case and the investigation and the mystery of what had happened to Greg Williams, where he had, been shot in his own bed. And then the second episode of 48 hours ended up being the trial because, spoiler alert, it does not resolve, the neat and tidy way that she had hoped it would by saying that he had committed suicide. So there's lots of twists and turns, and it created 2 episodes of 48 hours. And then I ended up going and working there as a field producer based in Dallas and doing other stories all over Texas and
no, there are some amazing,
states.
By the way, front-facing journalists along with yourself out of Dallas, right? Who work on 48 hours, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So there's bureaus. It's like, you're a TV guy. So it's different than the affiliates, but national
But like a guy
bureaus.
like Peter Van Zandt, is he based out of Dallas?
No. So he's based out of New York.
Okay.
But I think he actually lives in Connecticut. Hopefully I'm not giving away his privacy.
No, yeah. But he's a Dallas guy. I know he was like a local Dallas news guy, and he's one of the best investigative reporters ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. So he's at WFAA for a while in its heyday. And so he had a soft spot for Texas. So I did most of my stories with Peter. And then also Maureen Maher, and she had worked in the Dallas bureau for CBS News. But they were the main ones that worked on Dallas stories. But there were other, like David Begnaud was based in Dallas, and awesome. Omar Villafranca. Yeah. So and I think Begnaud is now in New York, but he was in Dallas for a while. So it was a lot of fun. There's a lot of personalities and lots of stories. And, it ended up, just the way I always say, like, my career is story driven. So I follow one story to the next, and, that leads to some unexpected career changes. And so, the latest one is that I decided to write a book about what it's like to work in true crime television.
Killer story coming out in February, which you can pre-order now, correct?
That's right. Okay. Thanks, Pete. So I realized that no one had ever written a book about true crime television from the perspective being inside. What is it really like to work on this show, to have to battle with 2020 and with Dateline to come up with an exclusive angle on the hottest true crime story of the day. Yeah. And
because there's publications or news outlets, for lack of a better word, I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody, but with integrity. And then there's other ones who, look, this is a true crime story, and it's no knock on them, but we're going to find a way to get it on air, and everybody's going to watch it for 40 minutes on Hulu. But like when you're trying to find a particular angle, I would imagine that's super difficult.
Yes. Yeah. And I talk about this in the book, the difference between the cable crime shows and the network shows.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And they're very different standards and very different, tactics. But it was always a battle royale for the big stories, the crime story that everyone's talking about, like, the most recent one, maybe not most recent, but the last time I was working in television, was Alex Murdaugh in South Carolina, right? Uh-huh. So everyone's going to do that story no matter what. And so that was kind of my least favorite reporting, because it was more like pack journalism, but we had to cover it because it was that big. And so I always tried to find the stories that other people didn't know about.
As a field reporter, Now you
Yeah.
can do that. Like, is
Yes.
that almost like a field producer? I'm sorry. So you'll come up with your own, like you'll find a story and say, hey, this is something that we haven't done yet.
Yeah, that was primarily my job was finding those stories, pitching them. I always looked at it, and this goes back to my days in local media too. Like if I got assigned a story, like I was doing something wrong. Like why am I not finding my own stuff? You know?
Yeah.
So I always tried to find more stories than I could even do, so that I didn't get stuck having to chase the news cycle and do whatever big story was out there.
Where does that come from? Where does that come from? Because not everybody has that. That is like 1%er type quality to want to go out there and find. I just finished up working in news. Like it's hard to get people out of the freaking newsroom to go chase a job that they got assigned, let alone like that old school flavor is gone where it's like, drive around and look for something or go to a police station or, we go on about that forever, but where do you think that comes from yourself, that curiosity?
Yeah. I think to me, I'm self-driven. I'm self-motivated. I want to tell the story that I would want to read or that I would want to watch. And I feel like, I'm going to find that by being out in the world, and I mean, that was a joke. You talk about people who wouldn't leave the office. The joke is that my desk was always collecting dust because I was there so infrequently. I just, as soon as I got in the office, I was like, I got to get out of here. The last place I wanted to be. And, there's a line in my book whenever, I was at one of my really difficult crossroad moments at CBS and trying to get my first story on 60 Minutes and, getting pretty close to, feeling like I was probably going to get fired if I kept pursuing this story. And, I just had this moment where I was like, why can't I be like everybody else in journalism and just do the stories that are assigned to me? It would be so much easier, but then I wouldn't be me, So I just didn't do it. And, that I ended up getting that first story on 60 Minutes.
What story was it?
So that story was called The Ranger and the Serial Killer.
Wow.
And it was about a Texas Ranger who got a serial killer who was incarcerated in California to confess to a cold case murder in Texas. And it opened the floodgates and led to, eventually 93 confessions.
Is this Henry Lee Lucas?
Killer. Samuel Little. No. Okay, Henry Lee Lucas were false confessions, but yes, yes, these were real. So they've been matched up to actual, bone fragments and missing women and all sorts of fascinating cases. But yeah, that's Samuel Little is the serial killer. And so, I've always found, just great satisfaction in fighting for stories that I believe in and getting them, online, printed, on the air, in podcasts, you name it. And so, I'm really excited about my next chapter with my book.
Yeah.
And, just seeing what the next story is that unfolds.
Last question for you. What has been, but thank you so much. You've been so generous with your time. It was such a cool convo to be able to weave back into, the sobriety aspect. And then I think everybody now, I swear I was way ahead of the pack watching 2020. I was true crime when I was in grade school, but now everybody is, which is fine.
Yes.
I'm sure you're happy about that. But, but what's your favorite story, Ben?
Oh, man. So my favorite story is one where no one died, actually. And it was an attempted assassination of Judge Julie Kosurik in Austin. And so it was this unbelievable situation where, someone she had encountered in her court, that had come through her courtroom, but was not incarcerated at that time, decided that they wanted to go after her personally and attack her, as a figurehead for the justice system, and actually stalked her, went to her house late at night with a gun and waited for her to come home and unloaded on her. And really, her life was saved by her son, who was 15 years old at the time, who stood in between the gunman and his mom.
I've seen this.
Oh,
yes.
Knowing that the gunman was there for her and allowed her to shield herself. And, she's had, over 20 surgeries. Yeah. She's lost, fingers, all this, but she survived. And so we did a story for 48 Hours. It was called Live to Tell. And it was her personal story of survival from that shooting. And, she's just one of my sheroes. And I just think the world of her. And I think it's incredible to be able to tell a story like that and have a positive ending that she survived. And, she was able to enact legislation about judicial security and privacy of public officials' home addresses. He found her home address through her driver's license, by looking up public records. And so now judges and I'm sure district attorneys and other people are able to use the courthouse as their official address. And so they don't have their home address listed, and so there's lots of good that she's done with this terrible tragedy that was inflicted upon her and her family.
Did you people see what you can do with your life when you rid yourself of alcohol? I hope everybody sees that. This is an amazing conversation. You're an amazing person.
Thank you so much, Pete.
Oh yeah, for sure. Anything else you want to leave us with? Or, I'll put all this stuff in the show notes too.
Yeah. I think we covered it all, but yeah, that's really it. I talk about, just like my sober mind is firing on all cylinders, I'm uninhibited. And yeah, it's for everyone. I really do believe it's for everyone.
Claire, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pete. This was great.
Hey, one last thing now that we're done. How do I say your last name? I don't want to screw that up.
Thank you for asking. Yeah. So it's Sanama, rhymes with Panama.
Wow. See, thank gosh. Yeah. Now, is that like the South Louisiana?
Yes,
yeah,
it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a Sanama, Louisiana. There's a Sanama High School, all that. So the T's are silent. So if you were, if we were actually in France, I think they would say like Saint-Amand or something, but I don't say that. Nobody says that. Yeah. So that's the way I was taught to explain it to people, growing up was Sanama rhymes with Panama. So
I appreciate it. All right. I'll send you a link. Yeah. This will probably come up in like 3 weeks. I'll send you a link. Please keep in touch. Anything you need from me, you let me know. It was so cool talking with you.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for having me on. And this was really cool.
Thanks so much for listening to the Payoff with Pete. Once again, I'm Pete Souza. And of course, we are part of the Rogue Media Network. All kinds of good podcasts you can find at roguemedianetwork.com. And of course, you can find this podcast and all those other ones wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, other spots like that.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production. Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.